Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are now on chapter 8 of our book on the essence of chassidus. We're in chapter 8. And last week we said, I'm going to read the last paragraph on the previous section on page 48. For a more lengthy explanation, you can go to the recording. But we said, and thus chassidus is likened to oil, for it also possesses these two properties. By virtue of its nature as essence, it does not mix with any other thing. Essence doesn't mix because it's the essence of everything. It doesn't become diluted. It is the essential core of the life force, higher than any radiation and reflection, and also comes to the top. And on the other hand, chassidus diffuses into and permeates every single thing, as explained above. Just like oil gets into everything, it's very interesting. Oil can't be diluted by water. If you take wine and you mix wine with water, your wine will get diluted. If you try to dilute your oil, the oil will not get diluted because it's the essence, it can't be diluted. On the other hand, the thing about oil is you can't contain it, it gets into everything. It's much easier to clean up a wine spill than an oil spill. It gets into everything. Chassidus is the essence. The essence will never get diluted, and it will get into everything. And it permeates into everything. It's almost like the essence of the neshama. The essence of the neshama will never get diluted. So you meet a person who seems like they have no real connection with Yiddishkeit, but you touch the pintele yid, the essence of the neshama, and you find that it's intact, like the vial of oil, like that pure oil that they had on Hanukkah. It's intact, and it's pure, and it's perfect, and it was never diluted one iota. It doesn't get diluted. And once you get there, once you start spreading it, boom, it's over because it's going to get into everything. Once you touch that, it gets into everything. Makes sense? That's what the neshama is. And that's the neshama of Torah, which is chassidus, which is the essence. The yechida, as we said in previous chapters, you touch it, you get the essence, undiluted, and it gets into everything. Yes. Chapter 8. The life and vitality which the teachings of chassidus infuse into all aspects of the world, the miniature world of man and the real literal world. There's the world, in other words, there's the world, every person is a whole world. There's every person is a whole world, and then there's the larger world. So the neshama, you touch the essence, the emes, the essence, the vial of oil, the Hanukkah oil, let's say, right? Which is obviously a symbol for this level of connection. The pintele yid, you touch this. It affects every element of the person, and it gets into every element of life. So the light and the vitality of this, the life and the vitality issue from the vitality that chassidus infuses into all the elements of Torah and are generated from that life force. For all the elements of creation are drawn from and are derived through the Torah. Everything, we said this previously, everything comes from Torah. Hashem created the world by looking into the Torah. So Torah is at the core and the essence of everything. So you get to the essence of Torah, you get to the essence of the whole world. In the Torah itself, and we've spoken about this previously, but now we're going to speak about it more at more length. In the Torah itself, there are 4 levels of interpretation, as we know, as we've spoken about. There are 4 ways to read Torah. Any passage of Torah can be read in 4 ways. So, Jerry, how does this week's Torah portion start? Ra'ei, see. Yeah. Ra'ei Anochi. See, I'm placing before you today as a chaim,
life, or a blessing and a curse.
A blessing and a curse. Right? Let's read it inside. It's not right, it's shaftim.
Oh, yeah, so you're gonna have a judge and a sheriff.
Shaftim v'shaftim titan lecha b'chol sha'arecha. Judges and policemen you shall place before you in all your gates. So on the level of pshat, what does that mean? What's the simple interpretation of that? What does that verse say?
They have officials.
Wherever you live, you should have judges and you should have policemen judges to judge the law and policemen to enforce them. That's it. Very good. That's the literal meaning of the verse. Remez, what does that hint towards? So everything hints to other things. I'm not going to go through this thing. I haven't prepared this. I'm just sort of thinking aloud. But for example, in Drush, that's when you start darshaning, you go deeper into it until finally you come to, now I don't know which one fits in where. There's pshat, there's remez. So the idea of a judge here hints to a judge there in another place. Shoitrim, I'll give you an example. Shoitrim, the policemen, remind us of the policemen that were in Egypt. And two types of policemen. I'm just thinking off my top of my head, okay? This isn't authoritative. And then you have, I should have prepared this. I didn't. I apologize, everybody. Thank you for forgiving me. It's presumptuous of me, but I know you're nice guys. It's Chodesh Elul. And then, but I'll give you, and then chassidus explains, for example, that the policemen and the judges that you should have on your gates, you know what the policemen and the judges at your gates are? What are the gates of a person? Their eyes, their mouth, their nose, and their ears. So put safeguards.
Yeah, it could be referring to you rather than
taken exactly. So put the safeguards within yourself to make sure hear no evil, speak no evil, right? To make sure that we ourselves have controls in front of our eyes and of our ears. Okay, very good. So you can read Torah in different levels. That's all I wanted to explain. Yeah. Exactly which one is Pshat, Remez, Drush over here isn't the main point. So in the Torah itself, there are 4 levels of interpretation. They are called Pshat. So Pshat is the simple reading. Remez is when one concept hints to another. You read between the lines. Remez is about reading between the lines. Drush is to read things to darshan, to take things outside of the literal meaning and find deeper meanings. And then Soid is the esoteric, Kabbalistic interpretation. And the teachings of chassidus imbue each one with life and vitality. Again, chassidus is none of the 4 because chassidus is the yechida. And since it's the essence of everything. And since it's the essence of everything, it's undiluted. And not only is it undiluted, it gets into all of them. That is in addition to the explanations which Chassidus gives to various subjects within all sorts of parts of Torah. So Chassidus explains Pshat, Chassidus explains Remez, Chassidus explains Drush, and Chassidus explains Soid. Chassidus operates at all 4 levels, which negates the common misconception that Chassidus arose in order to explain only the esoteric part of Torah. Some people think that Chassidus is Soid. No, Chassidus is at all levels. The learning of Chassidus also infuses life into every subject in all the parts of paradise. Paradise is the acronym of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soid, which refers to paradise. Paradise is like the word paradise, or it's the orchard, as in the famous story of the 4 rabbis that went into the orchard and had their mind, their incredible experience, right? Which we're not going to go through right now. So it's all the 4 parts of Torah which we learn in Torah. And the subject then lives in an entirely different manner. Once you got the essence going, once you reveal the core and the essence of it, everything comes alive in a whole new way with an essential life force. This vitality strikingly illuminates and profoundly deepens one's understanding of the idea. An analogy to this concept of additional illumination and vitality in the revealed part of Torah and a practical law is as follows. But now we're going to give an example. The verse says, Kol Avodas Yom HaKippurim Einon Ksheidis Ela Boi, B'kein Gadol. This is a quote from Tractate Yuma in the Talmud. The entire service of Yom Kippur is only acceptable when done by him, the high priest. Right? In the same manner that the holiness of Yom Kippur is effective for the special services of Yom Kippur, it also affects the daily and extra Shabbat sacrifices that are in themselves connected to all the regular days of the year. They too become sanctified through the sanctity of Yom Kippur. Okay, so here's the thing. We all know on Yom Kippur, the holy high priest, the Kohen Gadol, would do the service in the temple himself. And it's only kosher if it's performed by the high priest himself. And so you would think that the high priest's service affects only that Yom Kippur service. But we also know that there's a concept, there's an idea that his service on Yom Kippur is not limited to the Yom Kippur, because his service on Yom Kippur brings a higher level of spirituality and meaning and vitality and everything to every day of the year after that Yom Kippur. It affects every day of the year. They too become sanctified through the sanctity of Yom Kippur. That's why Yom Kippur is called Shabbat Shabbaton, the Shabbos of Shabbases. By doing the Shabbos of Shabbases on Yom Kippur, it brings spiritual energy into all the other services of the rest of the year. The same is true of chassidus, which is compared to the Shabbat Shabbaton of Torah. The Yom Kippur, what Yom Kippur is to the year, chassidus is to Torah. It is likewise affects and influences all the parts of Torah. For the 4 parts of Pardes are the 4 levels of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chaya of Torah, and Chassidus is the Torah's Yechida, and the manifestation and revelation of the Yechida elevates all the other 4 levels of Naranach, of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, as explained above. So the idea being that just as Yom Kippur affects every Shabbos of the year, Chassidus affects every element of Torah. And that is something we've sort of been saying. We just said it in another way right now in terms of comparing it to Yom Kippur. I don't think we need to spend a whole study on how Yom Kippur affects the rest of the year. For those of you that are more interested, please look at the footnotes, because he explains it over there. Look at the footnotes, he explains it over there. But next week, we're going to start one of the most famous and most interesting parts of this famous discourse by the Rebbe on explaining the meaning of chassidus, because we come to the next phase and stage in the essay in which the Rebbe explains the prayer of Meideh Ani that we say every morning. And he explains it in Pshat, what the Pshat of Meideh Ani is. He explains what the Remez of Meideh Ani is. He explains what the Drush of Meideh Ani is. He explains what the Soid of Meideh Ani is. And he explains how Chassidus illuminates every one of the understandings of Meideh Ani, or how each one relates to the Chassidic interpretation of what Meideh Ani is. And it's very beautiful, and it's coming up. And so we're going to conclude today's class with this statement. And this idea that the oil is the essence of everything, and it gets into everything, will be illustrated by an analysis of the Meideh Ani, according to all 4 interpretations of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Soid, and how Chassidus illuminates each one of them. And that's coming in the next section of this talk. So, any last questions or comments before we call it a day on this segment of today's class?